At the start of 3.4, Phainon would begin the ritual to return the last core flame to the vortex of Genesis, only to be interrupted by the Flame-Reaver. The fight that he had been preparing himself for finally arrived, which led to the reveal of the Flame-Reaver's real identity and the complete truth about the cycles of Amphorius. Now that he knew about his origin, the real purpose of the Flame-Chase journey, and the role he was supposed to fill in, Phainon would stop the birth of a certain Lord Ravager. I think that is what the 3.4 trailer is trying to tell us. Let's talk about it. Now, from the get-go, things seem off. We see Phainon about to start the ritual to return Kafli's core flame, but something was amiss. Cyrene, who was there with him, was nowhere to be seen now. Instead, Trailblazer was. There are two possibilities that I can think of happening here. One is that Cyrene had never been Cyrene to begin with, and two is that that particular sin took place not in the current cycle. For the first possibility, that Cyrene could be an illusion conjured up by Lygus. As we know now, Lygus is the operator of the robot scepter of Amphorius. If he could mess with her as cognitive function, making an emanator of Erudition believe that she had arrived at the real entrance of the planet, I imagine conjuring up a dead person to be alive wouldn't be that difficult for him. The reason he did that? To push Phainon to complete the miracle of Genesis, of course, because Phainon was beginning to lose faith in the promised new beginning right at the finish line. If Lygus' goal is the completion of the Flame-Chase journey in every cycle, he wouldn't want Phainon having second thoughts about it. As for the second possibility, that what we saw was a conversation from a different cycle, is what I think to be the case because of the color grading of the scene. See, if you squint hard enough, the color in the scene looks age. It has that vintage effect that usually indicates a flashback scene. It is very subtle and slowly fades away as the scene progresses, but it's there. Plus, when Mem brought it up during the livestream wondering why Phainon's name was redacted, Albert said this.
Maybe that Phainon isn't the one we're all familiar with.
So it could have taken place in a different cycle, although not necessarily in the cycle where Calypso, Naius, and Polyxa existed, because the world-bearing demigod in that cycle was Chaos, and the last core flame to be returned was the Death core flame. Meanwhile, in that scene, Lygus referred to Phainon as Lord Phainon, and the last core flame to be returned was the world-bearing. Furthermore, Phainon said that Lygus had never cared about the Flame-Chase journey, which is not accurate to the Lygus that we know. The current cycle's Lygus helped Anaxa in uncovering the cyclical nature of Amphorius, which led to the continuation of the Flame-Chase journey, and he also fixed the express cars so that the Nameless could leave the planet before it was too late for them. That's hardly never lifting a finger to support the Flame-Chase journey. So if that conversation did take place in the past cycle, then it means there are two sets of Crisis Heirs cycling one after another within the simulation. One is a cycle with a world-bearing demigod named Phainon, the other with Chaos. Which is pretty messed up, all things considered, because then it means every other cycle, Castris and Polyxia would have to kill their twin sister in order to become Death Demigod. Another way to interpret Albert's comments is that Phainon is indeed our Phainon from the current cycle, but the reason his name is redacted is that he's starting to remember his true identity, which is not Phainon. The reasoning for this ties in with the theory that Phainon and Chaos are two same person who is trapped in this eternal loop of the Flame-Chase journey. At this point, the writers are not even trying to hide the fact that the entire Amphorius is a simulation. The special program itself looks like a collection of files being opened on a computer. Like, what was Anaxa doing there? He was supposed to be dead, but since it's a simulation, I guess we can just reboot the system to bring everybody back. As Phainon said,
rebooting really does solve all problems.
And that's the Flame-Chase journey in a nutshell. So while Lygus told Herda that her intervention might result in a Lord Ravager escaping their imprisonment in Amphorius, that was his goal all along. He wanted to synthesize a Lord Ravager and unleash him to the world. The goal? As introduced by Fables About the Stars Part 2, it is to kill Nous the Erudition. Yes, I've seen the Aedes Elysiae video and my mind is going crazy with all of the lore implications. I'll definitely make a dedicated video about it in the future. Now, this is what Lygus has been watching over in Amphorius through millions of cycles extrapolated by the Scepter, and the trailer seems to suggest that it will be successful in the end, considering what Lygus said here. He said, "Thus is the destruction synthesis formed." As for which Lord Ravager it might be, thanks to the Fables About the Stars video, we can safely deduce that it is the Iron Tomb. Which is interesting because there have been records of the Iron Tomb's crimes in many civilizations. He was even name-dropped by Herda during the Antinomic Waltz quest, the quest that contains the lore about the robot scepters. So, how could a Lord Ravager that is already operating and wreaking havoc in the universe is yet to be born and is shackled inside a simulation? Perhaps it is because Iron Tomb is not necessarily an individual, but rather a computer virus that could replicate itself and infiltrate any digital system. If Amphorius is a computer simulation, and it is from the simulation that a Lord Ravager would be born, then that Lord Ravager must be a data entity too, right? After all, before Nous ascended to Eonhood, they were a supercomputer. If there's one thing that can infect and eventually take down a computer, it has to be a computer virus. The Iron Tomb that has been causing destruction across many civilizations is perhaps the unrefined version of the virus, and Lygos has been tinkering with the scepter because he wants to perfect this Lord Ravager. As he said to Phainon, Phainon would soon understand what he meant by the gaze of distant stars, implying that he wished to bring Phainon out of the simulation and introduce him to the universe at large. Perhaps Phainon is the final version of the virus refined to take down the Aeon whose mind the scepter was said to be a poor imitation of. However, I don't think it would be as smooth sailing as Lygos expected it to be, because what Phainon is fighting for is a better tomorrow for all of the people who have placed their trust in him. If his drip marketing is anything to go by, Phainon would do anything to bring in a new dawn for Amphorius, even if it means burning his own body to ashes. I think Lygos' simulation is bugged, and that bug is about to bite him in the ass. You see, the ritual to return Kefli's core flame was interrupted by the Flame-Reaver. We see Lygos' head rolling on the floor, most likely slain by the Flame-Reaver who managed to get into the vortex of Genesis. You know, I would totally cheer for the death of the sus Intellitron, but it's most likely yet another fake body of his, so a lot of silence if you're listening and still up for hunting down crazy geniuses. Would love a little bit of help here. So the Flame-Reaver entered the vortex of Genesis and soon fought Phainon and Trailblazer. At one point, Phainon managed to unmask him and we could see the Flame-Reaver's head from the back. His hair was all white, just like Phainon's. If you're familiar with the Flame-Reaver is Phainon theory, then this should not come as a surprise to you. If you're not familiar, however, the gist of it is that the Flame-Reaver is Phainon. Some say it's Phainon from the future, some say from the past, some say it is another aspect of the current Phainon. I proposed that he was from a past timeline, and it was precisely because he had seen the end of Amphorius that he was hunting down the core flames in the first place. You see, other than his hair, his skin also looks very pale, as if someone has sucked all of his color and left him with only black and white. This paleness is similar to how Phainon looks in his 5-star light cone. He also has that crack at the back of his head, similar to all the cracks in Phainon's body in the same light cone. Perhaps this is what happens to Phainon at the end of every cycle. The Flame-Reaver looks like that because he has reached the end of his cycle and gone through that physical transformation. As Anaxa has concluded, Amphorius is cyclical in nature. Everybody will die, the world will reset anew, and the only one who will remember everything is the world-bearing demigod. If the Flame-Reaver is Phainon from the previous cycle, and he has the memory of how it all went down in his cycle, then he knows that the Flame-Gist journey is a scam. That's why he's been hunting down the core flames. He knows that they should not be collecting the core flames and returning them to the vortex of Genesis, because that would simply reset the simulation. What he wants is to end the simulation. I think this is the truth that Phainon would eventually learn after defeating the Flame-Reaver. In the reflection of Lygos' eye, we could see Phainon using the ceremonial blade to defeat the Flame-Reaver, which is then followed by this scene of Phainon crying and the gold dust flying all around him. This speck of dust reminds me of when Anaxa took out the Risen's core flame from his body, leading to him disintegrating into thin air, but also of 1 week when he finally merged with Sunday. A similar thing is happening here. The Flame-Reaver would die the same way Anaxa did, disintegrating into thin air, because just like Anaxa, the Flame-Reaver had attained godhood before his death. However, he would not simply evaporate into nothing, but instead he would fuse himself with our Phainon, just like 1 week did with Sunday. This merge would allow Phainon to inherit all of the Flame-Reaver's memories, which was the cause of Phainon's tears in this scene, and part of it had everything to do with this blue pin that Phainon was holding, the blue pin that belonged to Cyrene. There are 2 things that I find interesting in the reveal about Aedes Elysiae. One is that the village has these statues that so far we've only seen in Yenisopolis, statues that are related to the 3 Titans of Fate. This implies that Aedes Elysiae was a village that worshipped the 3 Titans of Fate. Remember what Aglaya said when Trailblazer returned Ornyx's core flame? She said that in all of the years they had been on the Flame-Chase journey, they had never succeeded in finding the Crisis heir suitable to take up Oryx's divinity, which is weird. They had been on the mission for 1,000 years and never once had they encountered someone suitable to take up Time's divinity. This reminds me of what happened to Thanatos. See, Castoris had been looking for Thanatos all of her life. She had been alive for a long time and never once had she encountered Thanatos. Then she asked Nicador, and even Strife, who supposedly descended upon Amphorius alongside Death, had never seen Death in the flesh. Then she asked Mighty after he became Strife Demigod, and still no signs of Thanatos. Eventually, we learned that Thanatos had been dead since the beginning. Polyxia sacrificed herself to give Castoris life at the start of the new cycle, and that was why nobody, not even Nicador, had seen Death on Amphorius. So, what if Aglaia had never managed to find an heir to Oryx's divinity because that Crisis heir had been dead for a while now? And they had been dead because they came from Aedes Elysiae, a village that worshipped the three titans of fate and eventually lost to the Black Tide. And there is exactly one person that might fit the bill. It is Cyrene. She had golden blood, she was from Aedes Elysiae, and she died long before Phainon joined the Crisis heirs. This could explain what Oryx meant when she said that there were gaps in the memories of Amphorius. One Crisis heir was missing, and without her, the Flame-Chase journey would never be completed, which could also explain why they took so long to complete the Flame-Chase journey and only managed to return half of the required core flames before the Nameless arrived. As we've seen throughout the story, time is an essential part of the journey. If Trailblazer never arrived on Amphorius, then Mem would never show up. If they never showed up, then they would never discover the truth behind Nicador's immortality. Without Nicador's fall, the Flame-Reaver would never emerge from the Black Tide, an event that led to the death of Xerxes and Onyx, and Annexa's discovery of the cyclical nature, and so on. And I think this is exactly what Cyrene hoped to achieve with her death, the infinite standstill of the cycle. Remember what she said in that flashback scene of her death?
May this world never have need for a deliverer.
Cyrene had foretold Phainon's fate as the deliverer who protected the world, the hero worshipped by all who would save the entire world. This eventually came true as Phainon was the last man standing at the gate of the new world. However, Cyrene wished that they would never have a need for a deliverer, which implies that she hoped the world would never plunge into the inevitable destruction that would force Phainon to become the savior of the people. If she could divine Phainon's fate, what if she also knew that she was meant to take up Oryx's divinity? What if she was aware of the worlds beyond the sky, knew that they were all but data entities inside a simulation, and decided that she would not bend to the role set by the scepter, unwilling to fulfill her role, and so she chose to take herself out of the equation? This is the original bug in Lycus' system and the reason behind Phainon's tears in the trailer. Perhaps Phainon would learn the truth behind Cyrene's death. The Flame-Reaver would tell him and show Phainon the blue pin as proof, making Phainon realize that Cyrene's death was a conscious sacrifice done on her part to sabotage the Flame-Chase journey, hence his shocked expression and tears. As they said in the special program, while Amphorius might be a trap to set up a checkmate in the game of chess between eons,
But who knows? Maybe the chess pieces themselves can overturn the board.
Cyrene's death might be part of that plan. We even have Ceridra, who is described as a chess piece biding its time and someone who would bury time itself. She left Aglaia in charge, disappeared from public's eye, but somehow still upheld the law of Amphorius. And now Phainon, having learned the truth from the Flame-Reaver, would complete that final step in their plan to overturn the board. So he picked up the ceremonial blade, perhaps to assume the mantle of the Flame-Reaver. He must go and bear this burden, he said, pushing Trailblazer out of the vortex of Genesis as he underwent the transformation. Now, if we continue with this assumption about Cyrene, things got more interesting once we look at the new as-of-written book. The complete version of the table of content was revealed during the livestream, and the Crisis heir that filled the third spot, the spot meant for Time Demigod, was the jellyfish from the Divergent universe. Since High Sealance and Ceridra's drip marketing have been revealed, and Terrafok is the Dorma that represents Earth Demigod, we know that their silhouettes in the Golden Epic trailer are the purple, blue, and orange one respectively. So we can assume that this redacted jellyfish represents the pink silhouette from the trailer, a silhouette of someone that looks way too similar to March for it to be a coincidence. I have talked about it at length in my first Amphorius prediction video, saying that it was because March was not in Amphorius that the Flame-Chase journey kept on failing. If Cyrene was the Crisis heir meant to take up Oryx's divinity, and March's silhouette occupied the spot meant for that very same Crisis heir, That makes Cyrene and March one and the same. If you're still on the fence about their connection, let me share a fun fact with you. Remember March's companion mission that was released back in 1.3? A line of dialogue from that quest was updated in 2.7, and the post-mission dialogue that was initially released as an unmarked post-mission dialogue was repurposed into a dedicated adventure mission in 3.1, i.e., if you forgot to talk to March after that mission, now it is there in your quest list. I find it weird that the writers would go out of their way to update this companion mission almost 2 years after its release if it got nothing to do with Amphorius. And what do we learn from this update? The updated dialogue rectified that it was not Fully who sealed away March's memories. Fully was only interfering so that March would never recover her memories, thus never knowing about her origin. Meanwhile, the repurposed post-mission dialogue ensures that we would go to talk to March in her room after the mission because it gives us the light cone that was gifted to her by the Garden's messenger, a light cone that insisted that March's origin began the moment she was frozen in the six-faced ice. Now, consider this. March is an aspect of Cyrene. Somehow, Cyrene figured out a way to get a fraction of herself out of the simulation. Perhaps she wished to look for help, bringing in new variables that could help her break the simulation. Perhaps just a wishful thinking that a part of her could live a normal, happy life. So she launched that fraction of herself out of Amphorius. But the thing is, March was part of a simulation. If she got out, then she would die. And that was probably what happened. Sort of. There's this one equation from the previous version of the Divergent universe that I found fitting to March's situation. It's called Scholar of Candles, an equation that requires some remembrance and preservation blessings to be activated. The short description of this equation says, when characters take fatal damage, they will not be knocked down. Instead, they will gain a shield and become frozen. That could have been what happened to March. Instead of dying after escaping the simulation, she was casted in the six-faced ice, and that saved her life. And what is March's first playable path again? Preservation. But fate is a funny thing because then she was found by the Express crew on the 7th of March and chose to name herself after that date. In Amphorius calendar system, the third month of the year is called the month of Evernight, the month associated with Oryx, and the 7th day of the week used to be the day Oryx fell asleep after committing some moon creation shenanigans to rival Aquila. The 7th day of the week and the third month of the year all points towards Oryx. Even after she exits the simulation, March still cannot remove her connection from the Titan she's related to. I've also talked about it in a different video, by the way, which I would link below if you want to kill some time before the new patch. The second thing that I find interesting from the reveal about Aedes Elysiae is that the fairies Phainon and Cyrene used to play with look a lot like Mem. Do you see that? That floating pixelated thing in a distance? That's Mem, right? It is where the fairies that Cyrene asked whether Phainon would like to play with after revealing the Deliverer card to him. But then, how come Phainon said that he'd never seen such a creature before?
That forest was home to all kinds of little fairies. When I was little, I'd go exploring the woods and visit those cute fairies.
But then he saw Mem show up next to Trailblazer for the first time and commented how unique Mem looked. Also, we're getting a new planar set that has Mem-looking animals living inside the sphere. It's called Arcadia of Woven Dreams, which perhaps contains lore about Aedes Elysiae. Arcadia, according to Aglaia, was an ideal city that was protected by the Chrysalis of Gold, by Nestia the Romance Titan. Nobody knew how to get there, and the city was already part of the past. While I still cannot make out the meaning and connection behind them, I find it interesting that a village called Aedes Elysiae is also called Arcadia of Woven Dreams, and the legend of Amphorius believed that Arcadia was once a place protected by the Romance Titan, while Cyrene, who was from Aedes Elysiae, had been talking about the hero's journey being a romantic story that has never come before. Why is it even called Woven Dreams? I don't know. Everything about Aedes Elysiae is pretty much still shrouded in mystery. They didn't even show the exploration bit of the village despite announcing that Trailblazer would go there and explore the areas. Besides, exploring it with whom?
In version 3.4, we get to explore Aedes Elysiae alongside the Trailblazer.
They didn't say that Phainon would be there with us. Who would be there with us then? How did we even get there? Considering how they completely omit Aglaia's death from the 3.3 trailer but freely showed Phainon's transformation in this trailer, I fear for what bigger secrets they're hiding from us. Speaking of Phainon's transformation, I think it is most likely the complete version of Phainon at the end of the cycle. Unlike the Flame-Reaver, who could only long for the sky, unable to actually fly up there to retrieve Aquila's core flame, Phainon has wings. Unlike the Flame-Reaver sword that looks twisted and missing part of it, Phainon's sword is woven with gold-like material. Or rather, if you remove the gold-like material from Phainon's sword, then you're left with the Flame-Reaver sword. And unlike the Flame-Reaver that is a shattered vessel with a core flame placeholder in his person, Phainon has all 12 core flames within. It's almost as if when the world reset anew, the Flame-Reaver got all of those upgrades taken away from him, leaving him an empty vessel of what he was at the end of his own cycle. However, I don't think Phainon's new form means that he's embracing his role as a Lord Ravager meant to kill Nous. Aside from Phainon's motivation that is so far removed from killing some god he knew nothing about, story-wise, I don't think it would be that easy to kill Nous. For one, Nous got a Polka Kakamont. While Nous has calculated the moment of the fall of the Robots' empire, Polka was the one who did the killing. She's the one responsible for the death of both Roberts. If anyone wished to self-coronate and or abuse the scepter system for their own gain, Polka would stop them before they could manage to. She planted seeds of doubts in Potivia Adler's mind, stopping her from self-coronating even after she found the core of Rubat's scepter. She destroyed the simulated scepters that Herda had built inside the simulated universe. She might also be the one who killed the operator of the scepter that Skrulum encountered some Ember eras ago. He said that the operator of that scepter perished in self-coronation, and Polka might be the one who killed him, just like she killed Rupert before he could complete his self-coronation. So, unless Nous knows that their death would be beneficial, I don't think Polka Kakamon would just sit idly by while her Eon has a target behind their back. Lycus, I suggest you sleep with one eye open tonight. Secondly, we're only halfway through Amphoria's story. There's still a lot to the story. What about Hysilence and Seridra? How are they here now after vanishing from the world and leaving Aglaya to shoulder the leadership of the Crisis Heirs all by herself? What about March? What about Cyrene? What about Danheng? Is he dead? And now Fully is involved. The Eon whose appearance signifies that an important event is about to take place in the universe is now watching Amphorius closely. The same Eon who protected March from recovering her memories from remembering that she's part of a simulation. Perhaps Fully is here to record the moment Phainon defies his destiny as a Lord Ravager, to record the death of Lycus, and perhaps to salvage the memories of Amphorius so that the people would never be forgotten. Well, this video came out a bit later than expected because I got caught up with real-life obligations, and I ended up talking a lot, as expected, because I found a lot of what was revealed in the special program to be confirmations of my past theories. I don't think I've covered everything that I wanted to talk about though, because some, like the new Cyrene light cone and the upgraded version of the As I've Written book, are more of supporting facts to my theories rather than proof, and I would rather not repeat myself after talking about them at length in two separate videos. Anyway, are you excited for Phainon? What are you most looking forward to? I'm excited to know about his real name. Imagine if it's really Kevin, like a guy prophesied to save the world is just a guy named Kevin. Also, my channel is very close to 10,000 subs now, which is crazy because just at the start of this year, when I posted that first Amphoria's prediction video, I was barely 5,000 subscribers, and half a year later, we're double the amount, which is crazy. You guys are crazy. Thank you so much for subscribing to my channel, for watching my videos, and looking forward to what I have to say about the story. You guys are crazy. You guys are awesome. Crazy awesome. Okay, I'll stop rambling for now, and I will see you in the next one.